Hello, everybody. This is the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host, Chris Branch. The daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we only focus on one particular area, except for today, where today it's the AI News Day. So we look at what's been happening in the world of AI over the last week. And in AI, a week is a long time. And we kind of just summarize each like piece of news. So it's just really quickly, just kind of giving you a roundup about what's been happening. So without further ado, let's look at what's been happening. So one thing that came out, one news story that I thought was quite interesting, and that is OpenAI is recruiting talent from Google, and they are offering, I don't know whether this is a rumor or not because it's such a big figure, but they are offering packages of up to $10 million a year. $10 million a year to work for AI, work for OpenAI. A lot of them to do with the researchers. Now, this is sports, footballers' wages, what they're getting here. So, yeah, it's crazy,
Serious money to be made.
Serious money to be made. So if you are trying to work out what you want to do as a career, maybe start looking into AI.
Research as well. Like, that's the bleeding edge of it, and I think the safety precautions and everything like that is where the massive focus is going to be. Yeah. So that's good to see.
Research and security. Yeah.
Yeah, and in other OpenAI news, they've got too popular and have had to suspend new premium subscriptions due to the new GPTs. So can't handle the server load, which is good that they're prioritizing the premium users, because I keep getting rate limited recently, and it's quite frustrating as a premium user, to constantly be rate limited because the amount of new people onboarding and stuff like this. But so look out for when they uploaded it to premium again, because right now you can't currently buy it.
Yeah, which is interesting because we was talking in an earlier episode, we was talking about the GPTs, saying they're fantastic lead magnets. And It looks like within a few days, it's so good that you can now, even if you want to pay, you can't sign up. So we'll see how long that lasts, but it probably won't be too long because obviously they're leaving money at the door. Another thing that I thought was quite interesting was Airbnb. So Airbnb, they've acquired a startup for close to $200 million to build the ultimate travel agent. Now, how they're going to do this is going to be very interesting because of what you can do as well. Is it really, when we talk about travel agents, is it going to be like AI agents, which we spoke about in the past, in the sense that I'm looking for somewhere to stay for 3 nights in, I don't know, Paris. This is what I'm after. And then you just type that prompt in, and then Airbnb just does the rest, including booking. Look, make sure the review is this person's over 4.8 or whatever it may be. So you kind of tick all the boxes, and it just does it to the point where it even books it for you. So that's going to be quite interesting that Airbnb has kind of entered. Well, I say entered, but they're really kind of putting money where their mouth is now when it comes to AI.
It'll put a lot of pressure on the search engines that exist out there for doing that stuff, like Kayak and stuff like that. So really interesting. Another piece of news that I saw was that the University of Toronto released a really interesting report, basically where they managed to train a model on only 5% of the data, of the original data, and get the same amount of output in terms of quality. So it just goes to show, really, that training data is so important, the way it's structured. If it's a net gain or a net negative, like more data doesn't equal better output is the actual answer. It's like, how quality is that data? And if there's more quality over more quantity, you'll get a win. But you can get the same quality out of just 5% of the data. So that was fascinating and not surprising, to be honest. Quality is everything when it comes to training data models for AI. So as the engineers say, bad in, bad out. You can imagine the worst way that you could say that.
Yeah. I'm sure they weren't using the word bad, but the same equivalent of it. But that's quite interesting, that actually, because I'm looking at it from a brand point of view. Okay, so if they can learn what 5%,
Mm-hmm.
how easy is it for them to kind of get to know my data, if that makes sense? Like for someone else to kind of take on and know my data. Because if before it was, again, the mindset was they need to have a substantial amount of data to kind of really understand certain things about the brand. But now if you're saying 5%, that's
Yeah,
going to be quite
you
interesting.
don't need to have much data as long as it's great quality.
Yeah.
That's the real takeaway of this, is if your data is really good quality, you can get a lot of insights from not a lot.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating news, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Another piece of news, which kind of goes into, again, another episode we spoke about on a previous podcast, and that is YouTube is set to introduce a policy requiring creators to label content which has been generated using AI. So where before we was talking about watermark, so if you're ever looking, it's one of the early episodes we talked about watermarking content. Here in with YouTube, obviously it's videos, whether it be shorts or long form video. It's basically saying you have to label it in some way, shape, or form. The platform will also enable users to request the removal of AI manipulated videos if somebody is impersonating you. Now, this is quite interesting as well because YouTube also has essentially licensed, I think, about 7 artists where people can manipulate their voices, but it's licensed because they've probably done a deal with the record labels. But I think this is one of the reasons why. I think it's basically saying, look, we people can do it now, and we're going to stop that because we're about to bring in something which we can monetize. So I think that's one of the reasons why they've kind of gone for that move. But it's definitely going to look at like a bigger picture of things like deep fakes and stuff like that. So I thought that was going to be quite interesting by YouTube. See how well that works. I think it's a lot easier to have some form of like watermarking on a video than it is on a image.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough one. I don't know, what will be the repercussions if you did use AI and they found out, do you get demonetized? It's a really interesting one. We'll see how that one progresses. So another quick news story that I saw was weather predictions through AI at Google. They seem to think that they've got a 90% accurate weather forecaster, and it's above any of the current technology standards out there. So that's really interesting. And I know that weather predictions are incredibly like supercomputer level difficult because of all of the different variables involved in it. So it's fascinating, similar to cancer and other things that AI may be able to help with, spotting 1 part in a billion, like this is one of the strengths of this technology. So again, I'm not surprised that it's good at this particular thing. What is more surprising is that it's probably already better than what's already out there, and a lot of money's been spent on that. So efficiency gains.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially because of the way the weather is at the moment. Now, I'm in Spain right now, and this week it's been summer weather. It's been 25, 26, 27, some cases 28, 29 degrees in November, and mid-November as well. So very, very unusual. So the fact that
you wouldn't be able to predict that based on data patterns of the past, would you? Yeah. And that's maybe what's interesting.
Exactly. Because the Spanish people I speak to here, they say this is very unusual. And if you look at historical data won't say this. But then again, we'll see what happens. My theory behind the weather is that I just feel like the way the weather is now, globally, it's like we've gone. What the weather in November should have been the weather 2 months ago. So it's almost like we've gone. The seasons are changing. But yeah, that's kind of like my theory, because it took a while for summer to kick in. In June it was kind of like April's weather. So it feels like it's a couple of months behind the weather is. But that is pretty much the news in a nutshell. There's a lot of stuff that's happened in this week, and we've only got 10 minutes. So we can't go through everything. But in a nutshell, these are kind of the main things that we've been speaking about. And if you listen to some of the things that we'll talk about next week, that's kind of expanding, because there's a few news stories that you can't justify it in 1 minute each. So there's going to be certain episodes that we're going to go a whole podcast. Certain things that we're going to spend a whole podcast talking about.
Mm-hmm.